All right. Hey, good morning. Um, I've given myself about 20 minutes to go over what exactly I'm doing here. So, my name is Steven. You might know me from X, from LinkedIn, from in person if we've met. But I I work as a QA automation engineer at Trek Bicycle, and my first QA job was a couple of years ago at this mobile app company called Fetch Rewards. They're called Fetch now, but there I first learned about QA. Before that, I thought I wanted to be a web developer, and before that, I wanted to be a Spanish teacher because I really liked learning. I liked the feeling in high school of helping out my friends with their homework, and I just like that one-on-one learning experience where you can collaborate and figure stuff out together. So that's what drew me to teaching in the first place. What I found out though when I worked at a summer camp uh, up in Minnesota called Concordia Language Villages was that I wasn't really a fan of the part where you have to manage kids and kids are kind of crazy. They've got all their kid problems. I'm I don't know if it's just that I'm not great with managing children or relating to them or whatever, but um, it wasn't an enjoyable part of the job, and I found myself wishing I could just focus more on helping people learn and grow, uh, you know, in whatever field of expertise they were hoping to get better at. So teaching wasn't for me, but at that point, I was already really in deep. I had like one semester left of my Spanish education major for my bachelor's degree, and I didn't have time or money to switch my major again. I had already switched it like five times at that point. So yeah, and then my parents hit me with this. I was very lucky that they were even able to finance the remainder of what the financial aid didn't cover for my college tuition up to that point. But they hit me with they wouldn't be able to throw any more money at it because they were spent. So I was sort of on my own at that point for paying the last semester, and for that reason, I'd taken like a year off to work and try to save the money myself because I really wanted to finish college. I wanted to have that degree because I don't know. I was told all this time that you need that piece of paper so that you have more job opportunities, and I felt kind of locked into it. So Um, up till that point, I'd only worked some, customer service jobs here and there, a lot of different stuff like bartending, retail. I worked at Home Depot at the garden center. That was my first real, uh, I guess more than a few hours a week job. I worked there seasonally full time, but I didn't start working like full time until this happened and I had to stop going to school for a little bit. So I ended up, doing that summer camp. That was like right after I heard about this, like no more money thing. And I found myself pretty miserable there. There was a silver lining. I really liked being able to use my Spanish language that I'd just come back from a study abroad experience around this time too. So it was cool to be able to like use Spanish to talk to other counselors and the kids and try to help them learn basic Spanish. But um, yeah, I was drained by the end of the first 6 weeks of my 12-week contract, and I begged them to just let me go home because I was breaking down emotionally. I couldn't do it anymore. At the time, I was going through some other external stuff with the relationship I was in at the time, which was not going well. Um, Looking back, I can't say whether or not it was me or the other person who was doing more of the bullshit, but I think it was not the right person for me. And at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. Um, I've grown a lot since then. I met my now wife. She came into the picture like a year after this time period with that summer camp counselor job. But right after I got back from that job, I worked at McDonald's because that was the only job that would hire me at the time. I really just was very unemployable in retrospect. I worked there for 3 weeks before Amazon got back to me about packing at their fulfillment centers. So I went and did that because it was like $5 an hour more than what McDonald's was paying me. I was making like $8 an hour, uh, making sandwiches in 40 seconds a sandwich, just go, go, go. It was an experience. I'm glad I worked at McDonald's because I got to see how the sausage is made. I got to also use Spanish there because some of the line cooks were Hispanic, and everyone was really nice to me. But I knew that I needed to find a way to like make a good income, and Amazon was a no brainer, even though it was well, technically my second experience with third shift. But because at Home Depot they had an inventory week where you could sign up for third shift to go help with inventory prep, but that was only like a week. This was like from like August 2017 up to maybe like, yeah, it was like November. I think it was November 19th. I remember the day I quit Amazon, but I was doing 4-day weeks, 10 hours, third shift. It was like 6 p.m. to um, 6:30 p.m. to 5 a.m. There was like a half-hour lunch break in there, but it was rough. I think that was my school of hard knocks moment. I learned what it's like to have to do, you know, grunt work, like in the realist sense. Like this is, I started to realize this is what my life was going to be like if I didn't get any other type of skill set, because I already knew that I'd burned the teaching bridge because, uh, first of all, I just couldn't afford to finish the teaching license in the first place, um, because I needed to take another student teaching semester afterwards. And I was already pretty broke at this point, living off credit cards exclusively, um, even though at the time my partner's family was letting me live in this kind of creepy house that uh, at the time my partner's grandmother had just passed away in. While I was there, actually, it was an accident, like involving stairs, and it was terrifying. And every time I came home from work, I had to remember that happened in that house. Um, so yeah, that was a really hard time. I think that's what I call my rock bottom. Honestly, 6 months after I started working at Amazon, I broke up with uh, that partner. Just there was too much emotional damage at that point uh, to really salvage that relationship. And I know that there was a lot of areas I needed to grow still, and I guess I didn't feel like I could do that in the context of that relationship. I needed to just, leave it and do some work on myself before I committed to somebody else. Uh, but yeah, that 6 months was grueling. I ended up with a wrist problem from all the repetitive stress due to packing boxes really quickly. My job was pack 85 boxes or more per hour. Ended up, getting really fast with it, but if you don't have good form, it puts a lot of strain on like your wrist. So by the end of that job, I actually quit because I was worried about not being able to use my wrist again. I was on ibuprofen for like a month leading up to the day I just threw in the towel. I didn't have a backup job. I really just had this. If you've heard of Shipped grocery delivery, I had that as a gig to do full time while my wrist was healing. My sister got me into that, and I'm glad that she mentioned it because I don't know if I would have thought to go do that. But I'm kind of rambling right now. but you know, so I did a live. I just thought more would surface if I didn't overly structure this. But I just want you to understand that like this is the time period where I decided I needed to do something. I needed to secure a future for myself that wasn't ringing up customers or packing boxes because I saw where that led. I saw all the people who just took the management path in those jobs. They just did it for the money. Most of them were not happy, and I didn't want to be that person. And it reminds me of lately what I've been seeing with Dan Coe, who he's the reason why I even started thinking about this whole content creator business path, because he always mentions, if you do what 99% of people do, you'll end up like 99% of people. And I've seen most people are just not happy with their situation. And I blame it on it. I mean, there's always like shit that you can't control, but you know, a lot of what happens to us is a result of our like intentional actions and planning ahead and having that vision for ourselves and our future. And mine has taken a long time to blossom. I've been a very late bloomer in this respect. And I think back to my time in college studying Spanish and education and the other majors I thought I was going to go into. Fun fact, like my first career idea was I wanted to work for the CIA and be like a spy. I even considered the military at one point, be like a military translator or something. Like I just wanted to do something cool and use what skill sets I had to help people and go on adventures and stuff. But I guess I found out later in life that there's many, many ways to do adventures and helping people with your skills and whatnot. So not really having any career path anymore. Like I kind of because I wouldn't be licensed to teach in a public school because of me actually locking in that I'm not getting my licensure and I'm graduating without licensure and like signing documents that say I'm not going to go pursue licensure. Like I burned that bridge or that boat, if you will. If you know the whole burn the boats phrase with like the Vikings and how they'd like burn the boats, so they had no choice but to like win the battle where they were fighting. But yeah, I had to consider, well, what else could I do? So I thought, well, what's the bare minimum credentials that I could expect to have? So I'm like, well, I could assume that there's a chance I won't finish college because at this point I still have a semester left to meet graduation requirements. So unless I can find a way to pay $4,800 for that last semester, I'm shit out of luck and I've got an associate's degree already. So I looked up on the internet uh, jobs, entry level jobs that require no college degree and pay at least $40,000 a year. At the time, that was a lot of money to me. Nowadays, I make six figures, but I'm getting to that. I I found a lot of options, most of them very uninteresting to me, but I saw one, and it was web developer, and I thought, huh, it's like building stuff on the internet. And I'm a creative person. I grew up playing the violin in school. I taught myself parkour, and I really like it more for like creative expression than anything else. So those two things, I've always just been an artsy, creative type, and uh, I felt attracted to this web developer path for that reason, and because I actually had, as chance may have it, I took a programming course in college. It was Visual Basic. If you know what that is, you're probably laughing right now because nobody really uses that anymore. But it taught me programming fundamentals, and I wasn't amazing at it. Like I think I got like a B plus in that class, or like a B. I don't remember, but I struggled the first time around with like how does the loop work and like what's the iterator, and if you don't know programming, just ignore what I'm saying. But you know what I'm talking about if you code. And I thought back, I was making this list of, well, is this like is this a good fit for me, or like which of the careers in this list to go about, 40K entry level, no college jobs is like a good fit for me. And I thought, well, I'm like a creative person, and I've I'm good at like learning languages and syntax and um, logical reasoning. Like I was good at math and English in school; those were like my strongest subjects. So I thought, well, you know, what are the chances I wouldn't be good at this if I put in some time? So I was pretty desperate. I'm like, I need something that's at least like a halfway surefire bet here. And like, I started looking up how you would get into this field, and I found out so many people these days are like teaching themselves how to code using resources online for free. And some people get their first job in 6 months or 12 months or whatever. And I'm like, this is exactly what I need right now because like it was to me, this was like the light at the end of the tunnel. This was the hope that I needed to keep fighting for my future because I was extremely depressed at this time. Like the relationship I had was falling apart. I had no money. I was living on credit cards. I had no future career planned out anymore. Everything was just in the garbage. And if I'm being honest, I did not have the best relationship with my parents. That was also falling apart at the seams, partially due to them not approving of the relationship I was in at the time, and partially because um, it's stuff I won't go into. But let's just say I felt like I couldn't just be a kid. I felt like I had to grow up faster in order to, you know, have them approve of me. I don't know if I don't want to go into any more details because I feel like it's private, but um, yeah, I guess at the time I didn't want all that responsibility. I wanted to figure my life out. I wanted to pursue something that made me happy and feel okay inside. And I have ADHD. I didn't mention that yet, but um, you may already know that about me. But I I had at this point been off my ADHD medication for like almost 4 years, and yeah, it was partially because I couldn't afford it, and sometimes I was uninsured because I couldn't afford to take any more money out of my check to pay for medication, so I didn't. And part of it was I was experimenting. I was trying to see if I could hack it, if I could figure out some coping mechanisms to get myself through life without medication in case this ever happened again, just so I wouldn't like fall apart if that happened. And I was doing pretty well, I'll be honest. Like, uh, yeah, the people who knew me could tell that I was a little bit scatterbrained and forgetful, but the people who didn't know me, they just thought that was part of my personality. So it wasn't severe enough for anyone to be concerned or for me to like be missing work or anything. But I'm going off on a tangent again. ADHD things. I am on my medication right now, so it's kind of funny. It's hit or miss. But yeah, I looked further into that web development thing. I ended up taking a couple of courses. I took some Coursera courses at the time before I found out about Free Code Camp. So I learned like basic HTML and CSS, some Python. Python was really confusing to me. Maybe it was just the instructor, but and I can't find that course anymore, so maybe they took it down. But uh, yeah, it didn't really. I felt like it wasn't totally clicking, but it wasn't totally confusing either. So in December 2017, I found Free Code Camp, and that's where I really got started. I fell in love with Free Code Camp. It's an amazing resource. I learned so much between then and I think like April 2018 or 19, or yeah, I think April 2019. I got like their three certifications. One was like responsive web design, then it was JavaScript algorithms and data structures, and then front end libraries, which was like React JS 101. So I had gotten some confidence in myself as someone who could potentially break into tech during that time, and uh, right when I was starting to heat up with learning how to code, that was when that relationship, that other, my past relationship, that ended, and I was single for like 2 months, and all I was doing like was learning to code and working basically. I think I had three jobs around that time, just juggling three part-time gigs. It was like 50 to 55 hours a week, just trying to make ends meet because I didn't know how I was going to pay for school. But I guess I found out that, maybe it's just fate or luck or whatever, but the timing was perfect because financial aid, uh, it stopped coming in for me under my parents because my my dad makes six figures, and on the FAFSA, you really don't get that much aid when your parents make decent money on paper. But yeah, I was turning 24 in that April, so April 2018. And when you're 24, the FAFSA considers you an independent. So I was able to file under myself and have it reference my income, which was very small. So I ended up getting like 10 grand in financial aid, which saved my ass. If it weren't for that, I still wouldn't have a college degree. And I don't know what I'd be doing right now. I'll be honest. I probably would have had to move back in with my parents. I was still living on credit cards at this time, just applying for more cards because my credit wasn't terrible yet, um, which got me into some problems later. But I won't go into that here. I will say though that having a financial aid enabled me to, you know, focus on school, have a place to live, and eat, and that's all I really cared about at that point. I was just starting to date my now wife, who I met in March of 2018. So it was a wild year. A lot of fun. Like our first summer together was amazing. We went on so many adventures. I felt like on our first date, I found out something about myself. I just love funny women, and I was missing that in my life. And I found a partner who genuinely made me laugh. I didn't have to force anything, and she accepted me for me, exactly who I am. And I was just able to relax for once in my life. I didn't have to put up a front anymore. And I felt so lucky to be able to explore this new relationship, like this new fell quickly into love, honestly. I got to explore this new love while I was building myself up to launch myself at a new career opportunity. and finish school and finally wrap that up, get my degree and get out. And, fast forward a year, I already had like my own website created from the free code camp challenges, made like 15 or so like applications, websites, and uh, we moved in together because it had been like a year and we still really felt good about it, the whole relationship. And so, yeah, we did that. And, at the time I was working at Walgreens. When we moved, I'd been there for about 6 months, and my manager told the manager at the other store that I moved to that I was apparently good at my job. So I was just a cashier at the time. But then they're in the interview at the new store. They're like, "Do you want to be a shift leader?" And I'm like, "What's that?" They're like, "Well, it's like a shift manager. It's not like the store manager, but it's like in between." And there was a pay raise of like $4 an hour. I'm like, "What the fuck?" Like I was only making like 9 or 10 bucks an hour as a cashier, and they were going to bump me to like 13.75, which was more money than I'd ever seen in my life per hour at the time. So I'm like, hell yeah, like I will make this work. I got an apartment to pay for now. I've got a girlfriend that I want to take on dates. Like I have motivation beyond just self-interest at this point. Like I want to keep building what we're doing here. And I just kept building, and I worked there for the whole year almost until this amazing moment in October when I got a call from a tech company. It was not for a developer job. At this point, I realized, okay, it's been 2 years. I need to get something. I need to start. It might not be my dream job, but if I can just get in at a tech company, then I can start to build this tech career that I'm dreaming about now, that I've been working on for like 2 years. And this company, Fetch Rewards, they called me back about this customer support role, and it's the one I applied for only like days prior, and they're like, we think we want to set up like a call with you and talk about this. And actually, no, sorry, this I didn't get. I'm mixing up dates. I didn't get a call in October. So August or so. So I did the call, talked with the recruiter. He thought I was a great fit for this role. He really liked my coding background. He liked my customer service background and management experience at Walgreens. And yeah, it got me in the door. I got this call while I was working, in the middle of my shift at Walgreens. They call me and they're like, "Hey, is this a good time?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Shoot." And they said, "We want to offer you the job, and the pay would be $17 an hour." And I'm just like shitting myself right now. I'm like, "What? Like, how could I get paid $17 an hour? Am I worth that much?" And like looking back, I'm like, "Oh, Steven, of course you were." But um, at the time, it's like I'd never made more than 13.75 an hour, and now they were offering me a job at a tech company that could launch my career and maybe make me a developer someday. And they were gonna start me off like $3.25 an hour more than I was making, and like I was just over the moon. I could not contain my excitement. I was like, I almost wanted to cry in that moment just because I realized like I was finally getting out of physical retail, and I said yes. So that started the whole thing. And I spent like 3 years riding that high. I spent 6 months there just learning how to do email support in Zendesk. um, I spent 6 months. I spent a year after that learning QA once they made a QA department. And yeah, that was interesting. I write more about like that journey in my blogs and stuff, but short version is when I was doing support, almost like the first week, I was very naive and ambitious, but I told my manager the first week that I had an interest in like the engineering side of things, and if an opportunity ever opened up, I would like to see if I could go for it. And she's, like, okay, but hold your horses. um, you know, and as it turns out, 6 months in, I was still doing decent work as a support agent, emailing users. I was kind of getting burnt out a little bit because of the repetitive nature of it, but overall, I think it was a great launch pad because it leveraged my existing customer service skills and tech savvy. So I caught on decently quick, but during that time, I actually found a bug because some users were writing in about their gift card not going through, or they couldn't spend their points on this gift card, and enough users wrote in about the same one and sent similar screenshots where I started to notice a pattern. I collected a list of these users' emails and documented like what was in their tickets that they were writing to us, and I tried to reproduce it on my own iPhone because it seemed to be an iPhone issue, and yeah, it was a bug. So I asked permission to create this issue myself and like escalate it, and my manager was like, "Yeah, go." Well, actually, it was the one of the two senior support agents that were like, "Oh yeah, more power to you. Own this, take credit for it, escalate it, and we'll make sure that people know it was you." And I'm like, these people are awesome. Like, definitely not trying to like get one over on people at this company. So I felt like it was a really healthy work environment. Um, but my manager thought that was really cool, and I guess they were telling me that I should apply for this back end engineering apprenticeship that was coming up, and I did, and I failed. If you know any back end development stuff, you'll know what I mean when I say that I left out the dependencies um, when I was sharing the project with the interviewer, and I couldn't figure out why they couldn't run my project. Like, I was missing the package.json file, so naturally they're like, "Yeah, you're too green for this." And I'm like, yeah, looking back, I definitely was, and I don't know if I would have liked it anyways. But they said you should apply for QA though. I'm like, what's QA? I'd never heard of QA. And, you know, I looked it up. I'm like, oh, software testing. Okay. And I figured, well, it's another way to get out of customer service here. So let me try. So I applied for it. My manager talked to the QA manager, and he set up a one-on-one chat with me just to do like a screen, just to get to know me. He gave me an assignment, like a take home. I went home. I Googled most of the answers because I didn't know what QA was, and he told me ahead of time. It's like, just do your best. And oh, I actually got that backwards. They sent me the take home, and I admitted that in the one-on-one chat later that I had Googled a lot of it, and he's like, yeah, well, I wouldn't expect you to know that stuff because you weren't a QA, so it makes sense. It was more important that I cared enough to find the answer myself. So actually, log in through the Google Home app. Not Google Home talking, but yeah, the one-on-one chat went well. He said he only really cared about three things when interviewing new QA. He wanted to make sure that they were curious, they had analytical minds, they were kind people, you know, just detail oriented stuff like that. Like, you didn't need to know formal QA stuff in order to start doing QA. You can learn that. He said, like, QA is the easy part. Like QA terminology and all that stuff, that's the easy part. It's the mind that is good at QA. That's something that's harder to teach. So yeah, I spent a whole year just so excited by this. Like, from the first day, I'm like, I actually really love doing this. Like, my whole job's to find bugs and to document the way I'm testing things and to collaborate with other people on testing stuff. like, hey, did you see this? And they're like, I don't know, let me try to reproduce it on my end. And it just felt like, there was only like six of us doing all the QA for this app, and eventually it grew to like 50 people over 3 years, and it was really exciting. And Sam and I, my wife now, at the time, she was still on support, but she was killing it. Like she was really good at that job, and she saw me really having fun with QA, and she's like, "I've never seen you this happy before," and I'm like, neither have I. So it just felt like a good fit, and we kept growing together. I kept growing in this career. An opportunity came up within the QA team a year later, where they were starting an automation team to write automated tests. And my boss approached me about it because he knew I could make websites, and I'd already made like a web app for the team to generate test data. And it was really helpful and kind of got me a lot of recognition at the company. And so I kind of took the same approach I took with web development, where I found learning resources online for Ruby because that's the language they used. I built like a little toy calculator app in Ruby and wrote some RSpec tests for it to prove that I could write automated tests, and showed it off to the automation boss, and he's like, "Yeah, this is great." And so they tried to like fast track me to move over there, but there were a couple of QA ahead of me who had expressed interest beforehand, and they had more tenure, so they went first. But I'm kind of glad that they did, because I had a little bit of a support system when I went over there as a result. When I got there, it was like the same story as manual QA. It was like five of us doing automation, and like the QA team at the time was like 20 or 30 people as a whole. So it was like a small little pod of automation testers. And I did that for a year. Learned a whole lot about framework design and test design more than anything, but a little bit about everything, like API testing, mobile automation, teensy bit of web stuff. But I also found out how to, add code to iOS and Android code bases, because I wanted to make my tests more reliable. So I added like test IDs, and the iOS and Android devs would approve the PRs, and then I would be able to use those in my tests. So I also learned about code review. I learned about CI/CD pipelines and how you run them. I didn't make any myself, but I mean, it was just this whole period in QA was like drinking from a fire hose constantly, because right when I figured out how things worked, I had a new challenge, and I had to figure out how a bunch more things worked. So, um, and then like after that first year of automation, I landed in stuff. I asked my boss, like, could I try front end, because I noticed they're starting a front end team now, and I have had interest in that, and I just want to try it out. And he was a very progressive manager who believed in giving people a chance to try out new things and new career paths. And so he would talk with the front end manager, and they set up a 6-month apprenticeship where I'd go over there and try to be one of the front end engineers. And that's how I learned how to write unit tests. And this was like 2021, January to like June. That's when this was happening. And I learned a lot of stuff. I learned a lot about what I didn't know about front end, but I also learned that I didn't really want to do front end full time, because I felt like there was too much pressure, like deadline pressure and stakeholders, and there was a lot of details that I didn't really care to understand or work with. Like unit testing wasn't my favorite. It took me a while to wrap my head around it. I did end up contributing to the 3 different repositories unit test coverage, but I didn't have a lot of fun with it. Um, and honestly, yeah, it just felt different from making your own projects, I guess. I feel like that should be obvious, but at the time I thought, oh, well, there's still going to be an element of creativity, right? And like, no, it's more like they hand you the design and like your creative part is figuring out how the code looks. And it's like, all right. But between that, like kind of being boxed into whatever you need to do and the really challenging demands upon a front end engineer, because these days it's not just like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and React. It's like now you have to build pipelines, and now you have to kind of know a little bit about the back end, and you have to know how to create a package, and I don't know, just there was more stuff than I realized that went into it. And I think I wasn't into that side of things, like the infrastructural side, and I just wanted to I just wanted to make cute little apps and websites for myself and my friends and my family, and not really for end users, I guess. So I said no at the end of it. I think they wanted to extend it another couple of weeks to see that if I could, tie up the loose ends that I was missing, but I don't know. Like I just said it. My heart's not in it anymore. Like I've realized that the less glamorous aspects of front end development aren't for me, and they're kind of deal breakers. And I like QA so much that I just feel safer going back to QA and pursuing that as a career, because I know that's what I like to do, and I don't mind the infrastructure side. I don't mind the boring stuff, if you will, with QA, because I just love QA. So I felt like if my heart's there, I should pursue that. So I went back to the automation team on QA for another few months, and at that point, my boss had already left for a better opportunity, and there was a lot of BS going on at the company that he was dealing with personally, because he was like the directly responsible individual for QA. And yeah, I won't go into that, but I would say he was justified in wanting to leave, and he found something that's more work life balancey and healthy working culture. So I'm happy for him. But when he left, I felt like I was missing what I needed on that team to kind of keep myself together, and I was getting bored. I wanted to have new opportunities to learn and grow, and I felt like I was just working on the same stuff day in and day out. So I left too in November. This was last year. I should have brought water. Um, so now I work at Trek, and here I've built so much stuff. Like I came into this job thinking that all I was really good for was writing tests, and somebody else had to build the framework, because that's what it was like at Fetch. I would wait for one of the senior devs, like one of the senior QA and automation engineers, to go and build the mobile framework, the API testing framework, the web framework. They built them all, and then like the juniors like me, now it's our turn to go add tests. And so that's all I thought I was good for. Even never mind that I've built like React apps, by myself. But I guess I just thought automation stuff, no, it's over my head, too complicated. Well, I had no choice at Trek, because you see, my team there had no automation stood up at all for any of their testing. They had one manual QA. It's like a super small pod working on innovative stuff, and my job was to come in and start automating some tests. I'm like, I mean, they have QA automation engineers in other parts of the business, but they're not working on the same kind of stuff we are. Their solutions wouldn't work for us, and I knew that much. So I'm like, well, I guess I have to figure the rest out or I'm out of a job. So those are my two choices. And I chose to take on the challenge. So I, dug into, well, what goes into making a framework. I kind of know halfway what it involves, or maybe 2/3. And so I looked up kind of how you would design a framework and, considerations that need to be made. And I found Playwright for a desktop app we were testing. I found WebDriver IO for the mobile app we were testing, both JavaScript and TypeScript based, because that's what I was comfortable with at the time. And I wasn't ready to go learn an entire new language on top of framework design and architecture, because that was already a big new scary thing for me. So, fast forward to now, and I know what I'm capable of. It's more than I ever thought I was capable of when I was a cashier or even a manual QA or an automation tester over at Fetch. Like I really feel like I'm a competent engineer now. I've grown into that idea, that self concept. It's taken a long time for my emotional reality to catch up with that, but I think during this year when I was trying to, figure out all that stuff, um, I was having other moments of growth too, and I was following Dan Coe and other content creators who were like building businesses online and stuff. And a year ago, a year and a half ago, I like injured my knee, and my I mentioned way back at the beginning of this that I love parkour, but I couldn't do that because I injured myself doing parkour over a picnic table, and like I've spent every day since either waiting to be assessed by a doctor or that most of this year working on it with physical therapy, and it has gotten better. But it's shown me that I'm capable of that too. I've lost like I weighed like 255 pounds at the time I injured my knee. It was the most I'd ever weighed in my life. And my wife and I like to call it happy weight, like relationship weight. Um, because you stop focusing on that stuff when you're falling in love and you're going on adventures, getting to know the person you're with. And um, I guess when I injured my knee, I'm just like, okay, I think something needs to change here. So yeah, I've been learning. I've been navigating that emotional roller coaster of will I ever get to jump again on both legs, or will it just be on the right leg? Um, and I know now that with time I'm going to get all like full strength and mobility back, but it was scary. Like I didn't know. Like I was in that life crisis again, like I was back at Amazon. I had use mostly of just one leg. I wanted to leave the job I was in because I was bored and felt stagnant, and um, admittedly starting to have money problems again. It seems to be a cycle with me. Maybe I should be. Maybe I should work on this. Maybe there's something else going on here. But and then I was figuring out how I was going to handle, not having the boss that I came up with in QA there to support me. And it was like a moment of realizing I had to take my life into my own hands again. I had to do something drastic. I had to make another big change. So when I went to Trek, I promised myself I'm not going to be a workaholic anymore. I'm going to practice work-life balance like my QA boss at Fetch always preached, and that I never listened to him about because I just wanted to build, and just squeeze as much career development as I could out of that company and that time there that I had. But I promised myself when I got to Trek, I would not let that happen again. I would be more chill. I would give myself time away from work that I deserve. I would work on my knee because I found out they had physical therapy for free at Trek, which, again, if I didn't work at this specific company, I probably would not have mobility in my left knee right now. But I took it upon myself to go to physical therapy and just keep following up, take the prescription exercises that he gave me. I saw a nutritionist shortly after that, started working on that side of things. I'm like, I need to lose some weight. I need to get everything in my body taken care of. And I thought, well, weight loss is only going to help the knee problem because there's less weight I'm putting on it. And then, like, I also started seeing a strength coach there because I wanted to figure out how to get the muscle up that I had always wanted in parkour. If you don't know what a muscle up is, look it up. I think it's really cool. It's a really cool feat of strength to be able to do. It's like a pull up, but then you crank it and then you push yourself up over the bar. I had wanted to do it for the entire 10 years that I was involved in parkour, but I just didn't, I never put in the time or the effort. I just always had something else that was more important to me, and I never prioritized it. But, you know, I didn't want to give up on that. I still had that dream to be able to do that. And, I I was fixing my health this whole year. I lost like 20 pounds this year alone, just from nutritional changes, like eliminating added sugar, which I have like an entire blog about. And yeah, my knee's gotten better. I've kind of grown into my own as a QA engineer, and I've been thinking more about how, even with a job as great as the one I have right now, and it pains me to say this, I just don't know if working for someone else is ever going to be enough for me, because this place is crazy awesome. Like, they have bike trails at their headquarters. It's hybrid. I don't have to be in the office all the time. But when I go there, they have free food well, now it's like $5 a day, but um, it's still like, for what you get, it's like all you can eat. They've got these free clinical services, so I can work on my health at no extra cost. I can go on mountain bike trails. I can, like, they go on bike rides as a team sometimes. They have fun company events. They have a really healthy work culture in the IT side. And it's pretty much a dream job for so many people I know. And yet there's a part of me that is unfulfilled still. And I know what it is now. It took me working at someplace this cool to realize that I really want to be an entrepreneur. I want to go out and build my own thing. I want to help people on my terms. I want to make money the way that I want to make it. I want to build stuff that I think is valuable to people and have them benefit from it. And I just want to continue to grow in that sense as well. Like, I love QA. I love QA automation. I'm going to keep doing it. But I think what I realized is this is a feeling that's not going to go away. And it's not a reflection on Trek. It's not a reflection on Fetch. It's a very personal thing. It's like a spiritual thing for me, that I really think that this is something I need to do. And when that really hit me on a soul deep level, I realized I can't just keep trying to grow within companies. Like, I'm gonna keep doing that as long as I have to have a 9 to 5. But eventually I want to break free, and I want to build a business, and I want to open a parkour gym someday where people can just like swipe their badge and go in and play on a bunch of stuff, and collaborate on learning new movements together. And uh, maybe it could also be like a learning space for like tech stuff, or I don't know, like stuff like that. I don't think I would ever have the capital to make it work if I was an employee. Like, and then when it comes to choosing the projects I work on, like that's something you have to own your business in order to be able to decide what projects you build, what to work on. And it would be all fine and dandy if I didn't have to spend 40 hours a week somewhere else, because it only leaves so much time for you to contribute what you really think the world needs, what you think the QA field, what I think the QA field needs. And like, I've seen how great this job can be, and I think it would be really cool to help people get into it. So I've had all these ideas recently. I've started scheduling content on X. Like I've started getting serious about it, trying to build an audience because an audience is leverage, but also it's reach. It's more people I can help. It's more ideas. As I've found out, the more I talk to people in the tech space or the QA space, the indie app space, the more I'm realizing there's like this whole other world where people have no idea what QA is. And I think that I owe it to my past self and people like me in 2017 to show them that QA is an opportunity that is equally valuable to development. You don't have to be a developer to break into tech. You can be a QA. And when you're a QA, you don't, I want to prove this crazy idea that I have that you can be a QA on your own terms. You can be a QA, like, you can be a QA business as one person. You can test apps. You can make test setups. You can make courses on how to teach, how to like automate tests and how to build frameworks and how like all this stuff that past me really just would have loved to have going into this job at Trek or going into QA at Fetch or just I love Dan Coe's idea about like building for your past self or building with yourself in mind, just thinking what could you have benefited from and I think the more I really sink into this and the more I build, and I'm just getting started, but the more I build, the more ideas I have. And like, I think it would be badass to build like a QA community where people are learning QA online for free, much like I did with Free Code Camp. And that they're getting exposure to testing real world apps with real devs out there for free. And we're all just learning together and swapping test strategies and ideas and see like you can see this makes me excited. Like I haven't felt this way about a new venture in my career side of things in a long time. Ever since I learned to code, I think I've been mostly chasing like career development and money, but now I feel like I'm chasing my dreams. Like I'm chasing what is that last little thing that is missing from this great life that my wife and I have been building that honestly we're so lucky to have right now given all the economic problems going on and it's it's hard out there and I really feel for the people who can't find jobs right now and that are looking for a career change because they're burnt out from what they're doing but they're not sure where to go because everything's so uncertain. It takes like 6 to 12 months to get a new job sometimes for people. So, yeah, I guess there's a lot more than I'm able to really mention in this video about how I got here, but I think my wife supporting literally every creative idea that I have and career direction that I try to go in and just validating me every day. And then this whole career choice that I've made, validating my competence as an engineer every day, and just us dreaming together about places we want to travel and um, she wants to build a nonprofit, and I want to build a parkour space for people to go, inexpensively practice parkour in a space that's open year round because that's what I've always wanted. And I know other people feel the same way. And we want to help animals with like the nonprofit, and we want to have just more and more beautiful things in our life. And we've both decided we don't want kids. We don't know if we want a house yet, but it leaves room for this. There's like this hole to fill here. Um, and I think the more freedom that we have, the more opportunities, the more financial stability we have, the more we're going to be able to chase these things and go double down on them and build what we actually want to build. But I'm convinced at this point that if you're an employee, you cap out at a certain pay rate, and six figures is like lower six figures is not nearly the end of that, but I would say like unless you work for some big tech company like Netflix or something, you're not going to really get much farther than like 200K realistically in like a 10 to 20 year span of your career. It just depends on what you do, I guess. But, with that extra pay after a certain point, it starts eating into your life. It starts eating into your family time and your ability to build other things. And it becomes golden handcuffs. And I feel like I'm already wearing them. But yeah, I think that there is more to life than climbing a career ladder and working for somebody else's dreams. I think eventually all of us should really sit down with ourselves and ask, what is my dream? What do I want to build? Who do I want to help? And what does that look like? And I'm here and I'm trying to build that with all of you. So stay tuned. I've already started. If you're following me on X, you know that I've already started. And I don't know what this is going to look like yet at all. But I know that the mission is to just create more opportunities for quality assurance, at least for now. And I think that means a lot of things. I think it means resources, learning materials, communities. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm really excited about it, and I'm not going to stop anytime soon. So stay tuned. Thanks for getting to know me.